Since we're going to start sharing our hearts in this sacred space, I thought it would be helpful if we got acquainted or reacquainted. Hi, I'm Abby. You may have known me as many different things throughout my life, depending on the season of when our paths converged. Student council secretary, cheerleader, Cicchetti ballerina, student council leader, political science nerd, DC policy wonk, international religious freedom advocate, juvenile defense attorney, social impact advisor, executive partner, producer, organizational strategist, business owner, board member. And there are other roles that are playing out simultaneously to those: daughter, writer, congregant, wanderlust soul, team member, employee, jazz fan, mentee, colleague, whistleblower, avid reader, roommate, nature enthusiast. And then there are the deeper movements that few have ever really known: perfectionist, failure, assault victim, overcomer, underestimated, achiever, depressed, encourager, adventure, lonely, creator, healer, builder. The words that best summarize who I am were famously penned by Walt Whitman in Song of Myself. Do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large and I contain multitudes. For many years, this largeness was confusing to me. I am an Enneagram 9, often coined as the peacemaker. The superpower of this ego identity is that it can be fully integrated and disintegrated all at once. It can hold incredible conflict and nuance, truth, ideas, creating harmony and a masterful mosaic of hope while also feeling lost and empty, isolated, and even unseen and misunderstood in and of itself. It was well into my adulthood before I really understood this, and that my strength is also my weakness, as it is for all of us. And the opportunity I had was to transcend identities, versions of truth, and beliefs that had been inherited, forced, projected, adopted over the decades, and uncover for the first time who I really was. Who is Abby? Not who I'm expected to be, not who I'm known as, or not who I wanted to be, not who others might desire me to be, nor who I was valued for being, but who was my soul? Who was the essence that God had designed and then unleashed in the world to embody his purpose of love? Who was that? And what was that? It's the deepest question we're all really asking, isn't it? Who am I? Why am I here? What am I made for? Am I fully living into it? And how can I tap into that on a daily basis? The night before I resigned from my job in 2022, I was terrified. More than that, I was numb. I had been in this prison-like coma for well over a month. Transformation was on the horizon, and it was like I was trapped within my own being. I desperately wanted to take control and have a say and stand for the goodness that I knew was just up ahead, but all I could hear were lies. Many days, many nights, and even more weekends were spent in tears. I felt immobilized, trapped, and like I couldn't source words or energy that would set me free. This torturous way of being culminated the night before a really pivotal conversation in which I would transition from a role that I had held for years. One that had shaped my identity, had held me through periods of instability in my personal life and provided me the one thing that I wanted more than anything, a purpose. By the time I made it to that DC hotel room, I was exhausted in every way. I was emotionally spent and wondered why I ever thought this was a good idea in the first place. I wrote down some talking points and rehearsed them, but nothing felt true. I had lost the plot. I had forgotten why I was even doing this, and I felt hopeless about a changed future. I had little confidence that I wasn't walking into a conversation that would take away any semblance of stability I felt I had left. That evening was very much like many before it. Heavy, sad, slow, full of tears and groaning, desperately wanting to feel something. Peace, direction, hope, and any sense of agency is what I was longing for, and honestly, what I was crying out for. But I just couldn't find it. And so I took a sleep aid and I cried out this prayer that could only be described as pleading. And I said, please, God, have mercy and help me and bring me back to myself. And that night, my prayers would be answered and it would change everything for me. In a dream, I woke up in a scene that represented the next morning where I was both fearful and disassociated, not an unusual feeling from how I had been in the weeks prior leading up to this exact moment. I decided that I couldn't do this, and I called my assistant. I told her I was sick and that I needed to go back to Texas. I asked her to cancel the meeting with my boss and that I was heading to the airport to go home. My dream then flashed forward, and I was standing on the jetway boarding the flight home, where I heard God say the same thing that he had said to me the year prior when I had contemplated not moving from DC to Texas. You can do that, and it will be fine, but it will never be the life that I wanted for you. And I responded, God, what do you want me to do? How can I step into a life when I can't even feel myself anymore? And suddenly my dream transported me to a scene that was a vivid representation of what I had been living in for the past month. I was sitting on the ground with my knees pulled up to my chest, weeping. I was in the middle of a circle and I was surrounded by these beings that can only be described as demons. They were continuously spewing out these horrible things that were deafening accusations against me. And I was sitting there begging, please stop. Why are you doing this? Please. Without any warning, a powerful woman comes into the circle and appears standing tall beside me. And I look up at her, and she was sure and focused, and she had a sword in her right hand and was leveling her gaze at these beings with such intensity and disgust. And I asked her, who are you and why are you here? She looked down at me and she replied, I'm you. Who are you and why are you sitting there crying? Immediately, my perspective was within the body of the powerful woman. And as I looked down at my former self on the ground, it had collapsed into what looked like a wet piece of tissue paper. It was a shadow form, no longer that had any substance. And now standing tall as the warrior woman that I've always known myself to be, I looked around at the circle of beings, and each one came forward with a lie. You're a failure. Everything you touch gets worse. You're a disappointment. You can't do anything right, worthwhile, or worthy of being proud of. you're a nobody from nowhere and you'll accomplish nothing in your life. You are weak. You can't withstand the pressure. You are alone, unloved, and unwanted. You are barely tolerated. Your life is not worth living. People would be happier if you didn't exist. These lies were all too familiar for me. They had been what I had been battling for the previous month, and if I'm honest, for the previous 2 decades. But each time now that this lie was represented, I struck it down with the sword and it evaporated. And when I was finished, I woke up in my hotel room. I was standing beside the bed and I was yelling with clenched fists, "No more." I woke up in that state at 3 a.m. and I felt alive for the first time in weeks. I had come back from a coma. I had reclaimed my body, my agency, my power, my identity. I heard God say, "Now spend some time remembering who you are and who I created you to be and what I've brought you through." I was determined to do just that. And so I sat down on my bed and I looked at my cell phone because I wanted a quick time check. And late into the night, I had missed 3 text messages from 3 friends who are completely unrelated and don't know one another. And it was the same message, some version of, "Abby, remember who you are." I knew it wasn't an accident. It was the truth that I needed to complete my transformation. And right there, I prayed and I remembered all of the supernatural things that God had done in my life up to that point. They were many. I knew it wasn't an accident. It was the truth I needed to hear. I needed to complete my transformation. And right there, I prayed and remembered all of the supernatural things that God had done in my life to that point, and how much more He wishes for my future. But sometimes our future selves require a transformation. And part of that transformation is death. But it is also being reborn. And that rebirth will change everything. So regardless of who you may have known me to be in whatever season our paths may have crossed, I think I now understand what Jay-Z meant when he said, "Allow me to reintroduce myself, because I am no longer who I was. I am now just who I am as my present self." And she is also still in the process of her becoming. And so I hope that you'll journey with me as we tap into our true selves together. Our souls, our essence, our God-designed purpose as full beings. It's wonderful to meet you. I'm so glad that we're in this together.